we are now 19 years after the first invasion of Afghanistan by the United States and the British forces back then. Right now, there are many people who suggest that, well, the war was necessary because of human rights, education for women, development, and would we not have gone to Afghanistan, many people in Afghanistan would be still illiterate, women would be still oppressed, and the society would be still backwards. And that's why there are even people from Afghanistan who believe that the invasion and the foreign occupation of Afghanistan was necessary. How would you respond to that?
I think it was totally unnecessary. I mean, we started the war there because of various reasons. There were, I mean, I can understand them. After the war, after what was then the Taliban was defeated, and Afghan people were quite capable of coloring their own future. Those people are not stupid. They're not backward, as you said. I'm sorry, but you used the word.
Yeah, but that's the word that is being used. I don't agree with it, but
me neither. I mean, Afghanistan was capable of taking care of itself, but we had different reasons to stay there. One of them, drugs, to call one, and we shouldn't have done that. And Afghanistan would not have been worse off hadn't we been there. I think Afghanistan as a country would be better off if we had not been there. Afghanistan, the Afghan people were quite capable of dealing with the remains of the Taliban, and all we did was creating unrest, and we have been there on false premises, and we were not able to do much good.
Okay. Moving on to specific aspects of your story, because it's an incredible story. I must say, when I received your book, I decided to start reading it. I went up to my balcony, I sat down and I started reading it. And before I knew it, I was 3-4 chapters ahead in just one setting.
Okay.
And that happens really rarely.
Okay. Thank
you. Yes, not just because I'm interviewing you right now and I'm giving you compliments. I really mean it. It's a very interesting story because obviously it is very biographical. So one of the things that I noted is that you said that, there is a distinction between labeling people as enemies and as opposition. Could you explain what you mean by that?
Well, an enemy is out there to kill you. Opposition could as well be out there to kill you, but their perspective is completely different. We had to deal with lots of opposing elements within the Afghan society. There would not have been opposing elements had they just lived their lives without us being there. And just the reason that we were there worked as a
it antagonized people.
Yeah, definitely. And I understand that. I mean, the Russian oppression had not ended long before we entered Afghanistan. And there were a lot of hooligans, I call them in my book, young people that tried to make their bones, and I understand that. I mean, it's a way of life you have to understand when you go to Afghanistan, that you will come across people that will try to tell you that you have nothing to look for in Afghanistan, that you should leave. I understand that. I would have been the same when I would have been 16 years of age in Afghanistan or 20 years of age. It is a very logical thing in that society to say to any kind of invader, please get away from here. And that's what we met. Young people that try to prove themselves, try to prove like adolescents that were just making an impression. They dared to fire shots at us, but that has nothing to do with fighting. That is a matter of young people taking shots at foreign troops, which is, in my opinion, and considering the way we deployed ourselves, a very logical thing to happen in a country like Afghanistan. And we reacted out of proportion to whatever happened to us, and that created a war that should not have been created.
You are from a different racial background, different religion, from a different continent. You drive in armored vehicles with most high-tech modern weapons in a country where everybody can see you from a mile away.
And in which country you could at least have said what you were supposed to be doing. I mean, there was no one within the local population who was aware of our plans, who was aware of the fact that we basically tried to bring welfare to Afghanistan. I don't know if that would ever have been possible, but I mean, that was the basic idea. We helped to reconstruct the province of Uruzgan. No one was even vaguely aware of that concept. So what would you expect? Those people only saw us coming in armored vehicles, armed to the teeth, dark sunglasses. I mean, what did they think about us? Why didn't we think about what they thought about us? I mean, we just drove in there. We never entered the population. We never went into the green zones. We traveled around them in large columns of
which is quite
trucks,
intimidating.
Which is intimidating, but at the same time, it provokes people to fire some shots at those vehicles, which I understand. I would have done that if I had been an Afghan local, 16 years of age. I would have taken my father's Kalashnikov. Yeah. I would have fired a few shots. And I would have made a runner for it. But it's not something you should react to. You should expect that as a foreign, I shouldn't say occupying force, but as a foreign force, you should calculate with that. And you should be prepared for that. And you should not be overly afraid for that kind of thing to happen. And we were overly afraid for that kind of thing to happen. And hence, we reacted in a way that was not proportional.
Yes, because you had disproportionate military power. So if you respond, obviously...
It was right away out of proportions.
Yeah.
I mean, if 40 people start to shoot at one time, that is out of proportion in any case.
You mentioned in your book that foreign forces in Afghanistan could be described as arrogant, inflexible, from the perspective of locals. Mm-hmm. How would you say arrogant and inflexible?
Well, if people come to Holland, for example, we expect them to at least have an eye for our cultural background and for our way of life and adapt to that. And I think when we go to Afghanistan, even if our reasons to be there are to reconstruct a province, we still have to consider the cultural background of the people we travel to or the people we try to help. And we talked about that. I mean, we shouted it from rooftops, but we didn't apply it in reality. I mean, we were too far away from the local population to even vaguely understand their way of living or understand it or live up to it. And we created our own way of acting and reacting. And I think that was completely wrong.
In your book, you mentioned that winning hearts and minds of the local population started to play a very prominent role in the way foreign troops were conducting themselves. But you've stated that it wasn't really effective. And I saw that you even mentioned that some of the winning hearts and minds efforts were nothing more than handing out paracetamol to local villagers. Can you tell us what was that all about?
Well, there is winning the hearts and minds of the local population is an important part of counterinsurgency, as you call it. And the most heart and minds campaigns I conducted with American troops, and they simply had to stage that kind of campaigns because they were obliged to do so because the superiors told them simply just go there and start a hearts and mind campaign. But that resulted in just getting out of our vehicles and, as you say, distributing paracetamol to everyone who came to us with whichever complaint they had. My knee hurts, here, paracetamol. Pain in my head, paracetamol. That is not a way to win hearts and minds. I mean, you win hearts and minds when someone takes a shot at you and you don't fire back. That is a way of earning hearts and minds, because that's the moment the local population says, wow, now we deal with people that understand what's happening here, because there was only one shot and there was no reason to fire back, and they didn't. So that is a good thing. Paracetamol doesn't do much for hearts and minds.